I noticed her before I knew I was looking. She was leaning against the counter in the small half-lit hall outside the lecture room, one hand wrapped around a paper cup of coffee that had probably gone cold. There was nothing especially dramatic about her, no loud colors, no deliberate gestures, just a quiet certainty in the way she stood. Like she'd lived enough years to stop auditioning for the room around her. I didn't know her yet. Not really. Just her posture, her silence, the way she didn't rush like everyone else. But I remember thinking, she feels familiar. She lifted her eyes at the same moment I looked over. It wasn't one of those accidental glances people slide past quickly. She held it. Just long enough for something inside my chest to tighten, like a string pulled gently but intentionally. I should have looked away. I didn't. She was in her mid-40s, though age felt like a strange word for her. If anything, she seemed more formed than older, as if time had carved out the unnecessary parts and left what mattered. Her hair was loosely tied back, a few strands falling where they wanted. And when she breathed, it was as though the room inhaled with her. "Are you waiting for the seminar too?" she asked, voice low, steady, polite. I nodded. But I didn't speak. Not at first. My throat was too aware of itself. She smiled, a small, tired kind of smile that felt like it came from somewhere deeper than the moment. The kind of smile a person has when they've been both loved and disappointed, and learned to keep parts of themselves tucked carefully away. I wanted to ask her 100 questions, who she was, why she looked like she'd lived an entire life behind her eyes, but all I managed was, yeah. I got here early. She glanced at the clock. You're very early. I shrugged, feeling stupid. I like quiet hallways, I guess. Her eyes softened, not laughing, just understanding more than I meant to reveal. I do too, she said. We stood like that, close but not touching, with silence stretching between us. Not uncomfortable, just aware. Her sleeve brushed my arm when she shifted her cup. It was barely anything, the lightest fabric-to-fabric whisper, but it sent a small shock of warmth along my skin. I pretended not to notice. Pretended my pulse didn't stumble. But she must have felt it. The air between us tightened. Like something had just stepped forward without asking permission. I tried to speak. Something simple. Something normal. So, do you teach here? Or, no, she shook her head. I just come sometimes. Her voice faltered near the end, like there was more she could say but chose not to. I like listening to people talk about things they still believe in. There was a quiet sadness in that. Like belief was something she didn't quite trust anymore. I didn't know her, but I wanted to. I wanted to know the story behind the pause in her sentences, the late-night softness in her eyes. And she looked at me like she wanted to step closer, but had learned not to act on wanting. Her thumb tapped the paper cup once. A tiny tell. Someone's footsteps echoed down the hall, sharp, approaching, breaking the moment. We both turned slightly, but neither stepped back. She breathed in, slow. I did too. And just before the approaching voice called out, her hand brushed mine again, not an accident this time. Soft. Deliberate. But then, excuse me? Are either of you here for the guest lecture? The spell didn't break. It just paused. Like something had begun, and neither of us had agreed to stop it, that we ended up sitting near each other during the lecture. Not side by side, that would have been too obvious. She sat one row ahead, slightly to the left. Close enough that I could see the curve of her shoulder beneath her sweater, the way her fingers rested loosely against the notebook she barely wrote in. Every so often, she tucked a strand of hair behind her ear, slow, absent-minded, like she'd done it 1,000 times before. I tried to focus on the speaker, but my attention kept drifting back to her. It wasn't just attraction. It was recognition. Like my eyes knew where she was even when I wasn't looking directly at her. When the talk ended, people filtered out with the usual rustling of papers and half-finished sentences. She stayed seated. I hovered, pretending to look for something in my bag I wasn't missing. Eventually, she stood. We walked out together. She told me her name. Mara. It suited her, soft at the edges, shaped by time, not trying to impress anyone. We ended up in the courtyard outside the building. The winter's sun was fading, that in-between hour where everything looks gentler. She didn't seem in a rush to leave. I didn't either. So, I said, hands in my pockets, you come here to listen. She nodded. I used to work in a field like this. A long time ago. What changed? A small pause. She looked at the sky instead of me. A divorce, she said. Not dramatic. Just simple. Like a fact she no longer fought. He and I grew in different directions. Or maybe I stopped growing, and he didn't. Or maybe the other way around. I didn't know what to say. Nothing felt big enough. So now I learn quietly, she added. From a distance. There was regret in that. Something unfinished. Something she hadn't forgiven herself for. I'm sorry, I murmured, though I wasn't sure what part one was apologizing for. She glanced back at me. Her eyes didn't look sad now, just bare. Don't be. We're all allowed to end things. The wind rose briefly, brushing her coat open. Instinctively, I stepped closer, as if proximity could shield her. Our shoulders almost touched. She didn't move away. We walked along the pathway lined with leafless trees. Every so often, our hands swung just close enough that our fingers almost brushed. Not quite. But almost. You're young, she said suddenly. Not accusatory. Just noticing. And you're not? I teased before I could stop myself. She laughed, a real, surprised laugh, and shook her head. I mean it. You have time to become whatever you want. She slowed her steps. I don't think I do. I wanted to disagree. To tell her she was more alive than anyone I'd met. But something in her expression stopped me. A quiet boundary. So instead, I said, maybe you just need someone to remind you. Her breath caught, just slightly, like she felt the words physically. We stopped at the corner where the paths split. She reached out, just 2 fingers, and straightened the collar of my coat. Slow. Careful. Too intimate for strangers. Her fingertips lingered a second longer than necessary. Then she let her hand fall. I'll see you again, she said softly. Not a question. A promise that felt like it could break something open that we didn't plan to see each other again so soon. But 3 days later, I found her in the campus library, not reading, just sitting at a table near the window, looking out like she was somewhere else entirely. Her coat was folded beside her, hair loose this time, falling around her face in soft waves. She looked younger in the quiet. Or maybe just less guarded. I hesitated at the end of the aisle, watching her. She didn't see me at first. She was lost in thought, fingers tracing the rim of her cup, lips parted just slightly, eyes far away. There was something tender and private in that moment, like I was witnessing a part of her no one else was supposed to see. I could have walked away. I didn't. When I approached, she heard my footsteps. She turned, and the shift in her face was small, but real. Surprise, yes. But warmth too. Recognition. Something that felt like, oh, you. You're here, she said. You sound like that's unexpected. She smiled, but it was the soft kind, the kind that admits more than words do. It is, she said. I sat across from her, but the table felt too wide. Too much distance. So I shifted my chair slightly, just enough that our knees were angled toward each other. She noticed. Her breath lifted, just a little. We talked quietly. About the book she wasn't actually reading. About how she used to love libraries because they were one of the only places silence felt safe. About how silence now sometimes felt too loud. At one point, her hand brushed mine again, not on purpose, but not entirely accidental either. Our fingers didn't interlace. They just rested near. Close enough that the warmth between them felt like a question. Then, Mara? A voice from behind us. She straightened so quickly I felt the shift like a door slamming. The woman approaching looked about her age. A colleague maybe. Someone who knew her, or used to. Their hug was familiar, practiced, the kind that carries shared history. And I could see it, the flicker of awareness in the woman's gaze when she noticed me. The age difference. The too close seating. The tension not yet named. "Oh," she said lightly. "And this is..." Mara's pause lasted just a beat too long. "A friend," she said, finally. The word felt wrong. Flattened. Reduced. But I stayed quiet. Because answering for her would have meant claiming something neither of us had spoken aloud. The friend didn't stay long. A few polite words, a knowing look, and she walked away. But the body heat of her presence lingered, like she'd left something behind. Mara exhaled. Slow. Controlled. Her eyes didn't meet mine right away. "That," she said quietly, "is why I'm careful." I leaned in just a little. Careful doesn't mean you don't want something. Her eyes lifted. And in them, for the first time, there was no distance, no shield, no practiced moderation. Just wanting. Not wild. Not reckless. Just quiet and undeniable. She reached forward, like she was going to touch my face. Her hand hovered, almost there, then stopped, fingers trembling. "We shouldn't," she whispered. "I know." But neither of us moved away. Not even a breath. The space between us felt like it was about to break open, something fragile, something stolen, something inevitable, and then she stood. Too quickly. Her chair scraped softly. But her voice was steady when she said, "Walk with me." Not resisting. Not surrendering. Something in between, and somehow more intimate than a kiss that we walked without speaking at first. The late afternoon light stretched long across the pavement, the cold air carrying that sharp early winter smell, like metal and soft smoke. Leaves gathered in corners, brushing along the path when the wind passed by. She kept her hands in her coat pockets. Shoulders slightly drawn in, like she was holding herself together. Like if she let go of even one thought, everything would spill out. I stayed close beside her. Close enough that our arms almost touched when we walked. Almost. When we reached the far edge of campus, she stopped near an old oak bench, the kind that had weathered too many seasons. She stood there a moment, looking at the worn wood, the empty space, the quiet. "This is where I used to sit with him," she said. Her voice was level, but there was something underneath it, something that made me breathe more carefully. "Your ex-husband?" I asked. She nodded. "There was a time we talked for hours here. About work. Books. Our dreams when we still had them." She brushed her fingertips along the bench's back. Slow. Tender, but distant, like remembering someone in a photograph. "I haven't sat here in years," she murmured. And then, almost on instinct, she lowered herself onto the bench. I hesitated, then sat beside her, the wood cold through my coat. The silence now had weight. She looked straight ahead when she spoke next. "I don't know what I'm doing. With you." Her voice was soft, barely there. "It feels like I should know better." I turned my head. "I know." I didn't try to argue. I didn't tell her she was wrong. I just stayed. But wanting something isn't a mistake. She shook her head. A breath leaving her like a confession she hadn't meant to let slip. "You don't understand. I lived enough life to know how want can ruin things." I didn't look away. "You think you'd ruin me?" Her jaw tightened, not in anger, but in something rawer. Something like fear. Then she looked at me. Really looked. and the world narrowed down to the space between us. "You're young," she whispered. "You don't see how this looks." "I don't care how it looks," I said. Too fast. Too honest. The words came out before I could soften them. Her breath hitched, the faintest sound, but her eyes didn't break from mine. I reached up, slowly, giving her room to stop me. I brushed a loose strand of hair from her cheek. My fingertips grazed her skin, warm, impossibly soft. She didn't move. Didn't breathe. The air between us tightened, thickened. She leaned in, just barely, her forehead nearly touching mine. Her scent, warm and faintly floral, surrounded me. I felt her breath, slow and shaking, brush my lips. Everything in me leaned forward. But just as that tiny distance was about to disappear, just as something irreversible was about to happen, she pressed her hand to my chest. Not pushing away, just holding me there. Holding me still. Her voice was barely sound. More breath than voice. "If I cross this line, I won't be able to go back." I swallowed. Hard. "Then don't," I whispered. "Don't go back." Her eyes closed. Her hand curled in the fabric of my coat. She opened her mouth, to speak, to surrender, to break, and then, a door slammed from across the courtyard. A voice called her name. Loud. Too close. We froze. The moment shattered, but the pull did not. The voice calling her name didn't belong to a stranger. It was her son. He crossed the courtyard quickly, backpack slung over one shoulder, hair wind-tossed. He looked just a few years younger than me. Close enough that the air shifted, sharp, immediate, like the world had suddenly tilted. Mara stepped back from me, but not fast. Not with panic. With a kind of controlled, practiced undoing, the same way someone gently closes a door they were afraid to open. "Mom," he said, out of breath and smiling. "I didn't know you were on campus today." Her son. Her son. The word sat heavy in my chest, rearranging the ground beneath us. She smiled, carefully. The version of her smile meant for public light. I wasn't planning to stay long. He turned to me. "Hey. I think we've had a class together." He didn't place me yet. Not in this proximity. Not in this silence. I forced a nod. "Yeah. Maybe." Mara's breathing had changed, shallow, contained. She kept her hands tucked into her coat pockets. But I could still feel the echo of her fingers curled in my coat. Her son continued talking, something about a professor, something about lunch, but neither of us were listening. The three of us were standing there, but the real conversation happened in the silence threading between her and me. Her eyes didn't meet mine again. When he walked ahead to answer a text, leaving us a few steps behind, I exhaled a breath I didn't realize I'd been holding. "You didn't tell me," I said quietly. She kept her gaze forward. "You didn't ask." "That's not," my voice caught. Too much emotion too fast. I swallowed. "It matters, Mara." She stopped walking, and so did I. Her voice was low. "I didn't want you to look at me differently." I stared at her. "I don't." But something had shifted anyway. Not the wanting, that was still there, sharp and undeniable, but the weight of it. The gravity. The risk. She looked up at me then, truly looked, and something in her expression cracked. Not broken. Just, unguarded. "I didn't think anyone would want me like this anymore," she whispered. "As I am now. With history. With mistakes. With pasts I can't change." The honesty hit deeper than anything else so far. Her hands trembled. Just a little. So slight she probably thought I wouldn't notice. I stepped closer, slow, conscious, until her shoulder brushed my chest and I could feel the warmth of her breath again. "You think I want something easy?" I murmured. "I want you. All of you. Her breath shuddered. Not delicate. Human. She closed the space between us, just half a step, but it was enough. Her forehead nearly tipped against mine again, and this time, no guilt, no hesitation, just a quiet surrender of gravity. But before lips met, before breath became contact, her son called to her again. She pulled back, slowly, painfully, like peeling away from warmth into cold. But this time, she didn't walk away. She looked at me with a steadiness that didn't exist before. Tonight, she said. Voice low. Certain. No running. No pretending it's nothing. A decision made. A line already crossed. The world held its breath. That night, I waited outside the library where she said to meet. The campus was mostly empty, winter break close enough that the walkways were quiet, buildings dim. The air was crisp enough to see your breath. Every sound felt amplified. Footsteps. Wind. The faint echo of doors shutting somewhere far away. She arrived slowly, like she wasn't sure she should keep walking, but couldn't stop either. Her hair was down again. No makeup. Just her. And somehow, that made her look more like the version of herself I had been trying to glimpse beneath everything else. She stopped a few steps away. Not close enough to touch. Just close enough to feel. I shouldn't have asked you to come, she said. You did, I answered. Her shoulders rose on a breath, not dramatic, just tired. Tired from wanting something she told herself she wasn't allowed to want. I've spent years, she said quietly, trying to make myself smaller. To take up less space. To not inconvenience anyone. To not disrupt anything. She looked at me. And then you just, look at me, she whispered. And I remember I used to be alive. Something in my chest tightened, not with triumph, but with the weight of being seen. Fully. Uncomfortably. Honestly. I stepped closer. One slow step. Then another. She didn't move away. We were inches apart now, maybe less. Our breath warmed the same cold air between us. Her eyes flicked down to my mouth, then up again. Her hand lifted, stopped, hovered. Not hesitant, just careful. Permission. I nodded. Her fingers touched my jaw. Light, almost trembling, not from fear, but from holding back too much for too long. Her thumb brushed my cheek in a slow, aching stroke. This is a mistake, she murmured, but her voice didn't sound like someone trying to stop anything. It might be, I said. Her forehead leaned into mine. Soft contact, but it felt like the world shifted under it. But it's ours, I added. Something broke quietly inside her. Not in a painful way, in the way something sealed too tightly finally exhales. She closed her eyes. And for a long moment, we didn't speak. We just stood. Foreheads touching. Bodies nearly against each other. Breathing the same breath. The kind of closeness that isn't loud, it's devastating in silence. When she spoke, it was barely sound. If I let myself have this, she whispered, I don't know if I'll be able to go back to the person I was before. I didn't pull away. Didn't try to reassure or fix or soothe. You're not supposed to go back, I said. Neither am I. Her breath shook. A small, unsteady exhale against my lips. And then, not rushed, not fevered, she kissed me. Just a soft press of her mouth to mine. But it hit like something inevitable finally arriving. It wasn't hunger. It wasn't urgency. It was recognition. Like two people who had known each other in some other life, finally remembering. When she pulled back, her hand stayed on my face. No fear now. No hiding. No apologies. We start from here, she said. Not a question. A truth. And everything else, the doubt, the caution, the rules, fell quiet around us that we didn't rush anything after that night. There was no dramatic declaration, no desperate clinging. Just the two of us walking slowly through the quiet campus, our hands brushing now and then until it felt natural to let them intertwine. Her fingers were warm in mine. Steady. It felt less like something beginning and more like something returning to its rightful shape. We sat on the same old bench as before. The one she had avoided for years. This time, she didn't hover above memory. She let herself sit fully, her thigh pressed gently against mine. She didn't speak at first, and neither did I. The silence no longer felt like something we were trying to manage or escape. It simply held us. She leaned her head against my shoulder. Carefully. Like testing whether the world would allow it. The world did. I was afraid, she said finally. Not of you. Of becoming a version of myself I can't sustain. Someone who needs too much. Feels too much. I turned my head slightly, my cheek resting against her hair. You don't have to pretend with me. Her breath left her slowly. A soft release. A letting go. And you, she murmured, you weren't chasing me. You weren't trying to prove something. You were just there. I think that scared me more than anything. I squeezed her hand. Not to reassure. Just to answer. She shifted then, pulling back only enough to look at me. Her eyes were clear, not guarded or hesitant or calculating. Just honest. Soft in the way people are only when they stop fighting themselves. You know people will talk, she said. No bitterness. Just reality. I nodded. Let them. Some will think I should know better. Maybe you do, I said quietly. But you also deserve good things anyway. She laughed, the kind that happens when something painful finally loosens its grip. She lifted her hand to my face again, her thumb brushing along my jaw in that unhurried way of hers. Not claiming. Just learning me. Memorizing. I leaned into her palm. She let her hand stay there. For a long time, I don't know how long, we sat like that. No rush. No pressure to define or explain what we were. The world continued its small sounds around us, wind moving leaves, distant footsteps, the faint hum of a streetlight. And we simply existed. Together. Eventually, she rested her forehead to mine again, the gesture that had started everything. Whatever happens next, she whispered, we don't have to go backward anymore. No, I agreed. We don't. Our lips didn't need urgency this time. The kiss was gentle. Deep in a quiet way. The kind of kiss you give someone you choose with your whole chest. When we finally separated, we stayed close, noses brushing, breaths shared. We didn't need certainty to feel sure. We were already choosing each other. That was enough. Did you enjoy the story? What kind of stories would you like to hear next?